Dun, 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 dun. All right, people, you guys know what it is. Coming live and directly from North Hollywood, California, in front of a live YouTube audience. It's my pleasure again to introduce you to Mr. Anthony Tremino. Let me get him in the house here real quick. Anthony, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm glad you guys hit me back up to come back on because we got some unfinished business we got to get going on, Anthony.
All right.
So the first thing before we even get started, I would love for you to explain to the audience, because I myself didn't even know exactly how the recall worked until actually I saw a video you made. So explain to us how the recall works, because a lot of people believe that if I vote for this person or if I vote for that person, it's going to break up the vote. Talk to us.
So a recall is a special election. It works differently than a general election, right? So in a general election, you basically have one candidate going up against another candidate, and the person with the most votes, right, wins the candidacy. Okay, that's a general election. And in a general election, you want, if you have an incumbent like Newsom in a general election, yeah, I can see why you might want big name recognition, somebody with a lot of following, a lot of pull, because they're going to need to generate enough votes to unseat that individual. But in a special election, in a recall election, it does not work like that. So there are about 46 candidates on the ballot running for governor. Not one of those candidates is actually running against Newsom. In fact, Governor Newsom is running against the people of California. So question number one on the ballot that we're all going to get says, do you want to recall Gavin Newsom, yes or no? You notice how no candidate is listed there. There's no option to pick a candidate because that's not what the question is asking. It's quite simply, do you want to recall your governor, yes or no? By voting yes, if 50% of the voting population plus one person votes in favor of unseating Newsom, Newsom's out, he's gone. No matter what happens in question two, there's an empty seat in Sacramento. So then you get to question number two, it's who do you want to replace him? Who do you want to fill the empty seat now that we've created an empty seat? And in that scenario, you get to vote for whoever you want, and whoever has the most votes wins. And it could be that everyone has, it's not a majority anymore. If everyone has 10,000 votes and somebody has 10,001, that person gets sent to Sacramento. So that's what's different about the recall election, what people need to know. You hear a lot of candidates say this, and you hear a lot of the media say this. We need to get behind one person to beat Newsom. We need to get behind someone with big name recognition to beat Newsom. We need to not dilute the votes, and we need to get behind one candidate. Nothing could be farther from the truth. You don't need a big name. You don't need any name. If there were no names on question number two, we could still unseat our governor with question number one.
So it's just a matter, regardless of who you feel should be the next governor, it's just a matter of at least voting yes to recall Newsom, yes?
100%. Yes.
Okay, and I'm 100% behind you on that. Who's going to be the governor? I don't know, but I think anybody but Gavin Newsom should be in that seat.
So I get it, but I think that once we unseat Newsom and there is an empty seat, we do have to be mindful of who we put in there, right? Yeah, we do want somebody to replace him that aligns with us on more than just policy, but on principle and values as well. So think carefully about who you're going to sit there, because let's look at it. California is the fifth largest economy on the planet. Yeah. So make no mistake about it, California is a business. So what we're doing is we're not just electing a governor, we're electing a CEO, plain and simple. And so you got to ask yourself, think about the biggest company in the world that you can imagine, Amazon, Google, Apple, okay? Well, imagine that Apple, Google, or Amazon had a job opening for CFO, Chief Financial Officer, or CEO. And that person was going to run the company, the finances, the economics, the P&L, the payables, the receivables, the hiring, the firing, the litigation, all that. Now then take the candidate that you think is the front runner in your mind, plug that person in. Does Amazon hire that person to be the CEO or CFO? Does Google hire that person? Does Apple hire that person? Because if you're trying to get behind a candidate that wouldn't qualify for that job, they sure in the heck don't have any business running California.
I get what you're saying, but I think the problem is it is a business, but I think too many politicians have ran it so much of a business that they've forgotten about the regular working person. And somebody just asked about housing. How do you get housing to come down? Last time we spoke, you kind of gave me the impression that your thing is to kind of let the developers have more leeway as far as building. And like I said before, developers are some of the, I hate to say it, but they're greedy people. They just want to make money. Their bottom line is to make money. Their bottom line is to sit there and make as much profit out of a place. And financially wise, I get it. But if you go to any city in California right now that was like LA, San Francisco, brown people, black people, they're getting pushed out. They're getting pushed out because why? Because they want to build these places that we just can't simply afford. So how do we bring back the American dream of owning a home to America, to somebody who's not making $300,000 a year?
So let's look at development as a business, right? From an entrepreneurial perspective. Let's say you and I own a development company, and we, in order for us to be profitable, for us to be comfortable in what we're doing, let's just say we want to make a 20% margin, right? Let's just say that.
That's about the right one.
Probably more, but let's just say we want to make a 20% margin. If we made a 20% margin, we would be happy. Okay. Well, the way that you calculate that margin is to calculate your cost. If your cost to build those units are exponentially high because of regulations, red tape, and the government, then what you're doing is you're going to add a 20% margin on a very high cost, which then is not in the best interest of people needing places to live. But if the government steps in and lifts a lot of that regulation and that red tape, making it very, very economical to build, builders can still make their margin, but because their cost is so low, when you add their margin on a lower cost build, they get to pass that on to the consumer, and therefore you create affordable housing.
Well, yes and no, because in 2012, that's when the market hit rock bottom, right after the great recession. Builders got property for dirt cheap, and they didn't pass that on. They started little by little pushing up the price. One-bedroom apartments out here in North Hollywood are about $1,800 to $2,500. So, okay, I get your thing as far as building, getting the cost down for the developer. But again, I ask you, how do we get the housing market where people aren't making $300,000 a year? Let's say somebody's making $50,000 to $75,000 a year. How do we get them in a house?
The state is responsible for a certain amount of those builds and funding and backing some of those builds, right? But we don't have a government that's interested in negotiating with builders to be hard on them, to allow for competition in and outside the state, to drive those prices down, right? So that's one of the things I'm incredibly good at, is sitting at the bargaining table, driving costs down, finding efficiencies, and renegotiating contracts. So the bottom line is, once we introduce competition into the environment and you regulate from that perspective, then we can drive down the cost of the house, because the people getting the government bids are going to have to fight vigorously for them up against companies that perhaps maybe aren't in California, until they're disincentivized to keep driving up those prices and we have more control over our housing costs.
Would you be inclined to enforce any type of rent control?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think there's something to be said for rent control in certain situations, but I'm also a strong believer in capitalism and in people being able to set pricing. Well, and when you have supply and demand, I mean, a lot of times that's what dictates pricing.
A lot of time the Republican Party, and they will say the capitalist, and I get it. I'm also, I'm a little bit of everything, right? But I think the capitalist part of that argument kind of died in 2008 when the government pretty much bailed out all these big, huge financial entities. And it's always capitalist, it's always free market when everything's going good. But as soon as the tank falls under you guys, not you yourself, but I'm saying everybody else, they're looking for money, and it's not capitalism anymore. If it was capitalist, the banks would have failed in 08, but they didn't. They said, no, we're going to give you guys billions of dollars. And who always seems to be left holding the bag is taxpayer, middle class. Just middle class Americans are the ones that are always hurting. And I'm just trying to get somebody there that's going to help us out.
Yeah, so you're talking about the federal government, not local government.
Right.
Out those banks, so we don't have a lot of control over that. When you get into federal politics, it's a whole nother beast. You know that.
Right.
But with regards to getting someone in that's going to look out for the middle class, I think we talked about this last time, right?
Yes.
So there's the Robin Hood mentality that they tell and lie to the middle class with, right? So we're going to punish the rich, give to the poor. We're going to punish the high net worth individuals, the big corporations. We're going to punish them. They're going to pay the lion's share of the taxes. We're not going to allow the middle class to pay any taxes if you make under a certain amount of money. Hey, it's Robin Hood, right? Steal from the rich, give to the poor. The problem is, look what's happening. When you drive out high net worth individuals, you drive out their companies, you drive out their jobs, you drive out their tax-paying dollars, and guess what happens? You put unnecessary burden on the middle class. It's the great white lie that people like to talk about, and that's not how economics works.
Yeah, but what you're talking about is kind of like Reaganomics, where it's a trickle down. You give the corporations their tax pay, they're going to bring you money, but yeah, there is a lot of work. Like Newsom is pushing this. Oh, I brought so many jobs. I did this. Yeah, but those are jobs that, again, you can't afford to buy a house. You can't afford to send your kid to college. You can't really afford to live the American dream. So if California keeps bringing on these type of work, all we're going to do is have two classes. Either you're rich or you're poor. Am I wrong?
No, not necessarily, because look, we've driven out manufacturing.
Yes,
the most blue collar, middle class work that you can get. We've driven it out. We're choking our agriculture industry, which is middle class. We're choking them out. We're seeing fourth, fifth, sixth generation farms close. They're on life support. They're dying. We're sending manufacturing out. We're sending big companies out. So these jobs that he says he's creating, they're not jobs for the middle class. They're not jobs that are making California a powerhouse with regards to manufacturing and agriculture. So I don't know what jobs he's talking about, but they're not benefiting the middle class, obviously.
I heard Larry Elder, and he said he's for I think like zero minimum wage, like no minimum wage. Are you for a higher minimum wage, for leaving it the same?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that people should make a fair wage, but I also believe, as a small business owner, in the importance and significance of ensuring that small businesses can stay open. What happens is when you start to drive up the minimum wage, you start to fix your economics as a business owner, right? So you start to, if you have to pay somebody more per hour, a lot of businesses are stuck reducing the amount of hours that they give somebody, because the business owner is only taking in so much money. So if what they end up doing is they start cutting back wages, they start cutting back hours, cutting back benefits and compensation, because they can't keep up. So someone that was working 8 hours may be only working 6 hours to offset that. So that whole idea doesn't work. It doesn't work as long as we continue to choke out small business. So there's a way of doing it so that there are tax benefits and breaks to the small business that then actually gets passed down to the employees so they can make a living wage. But it's not just one fix. It's a multi-pronged fix.
Okay, that sounds about right. Now let's get to, this is one thing that bugs the hell out of me. Right now, I just posted an article. Out here in North Hollywood, where I live, there's so far 2 mini home encampments. And they're like tough sheds. They put AC in them, they put power in them. One is at one of our local parks that they say nobody was using, where they're full of it. There's another one across the street from where I actually used to coach Little League. So we got a bunch of homeless there. The one here close to my house, and they're going to build a third one, has 100 units, right? It costs the taxpayers $8-something million, $43,000 per tough shit. Are you for programs like that? Because I myself feel like $43,000 per unit, that could be going to schools, that'd be going after school programs, that could be to educating the kids.
Yeah, so again, those are the contracts that we're talking about that are not properly negotiated for your and mine best interest as taxpayers. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that we do have to house our homeless some way, but we can't have an adverse impact and effect on our communities and our neighborhoods as well. So it is a problem that does need to be met, but I think that what you're seeing, those are Band-Aid solutions to a bigger problem. And the government isn't good at fixing problems long term. So what you're seeing is a manifestation of nobody knowing how to deal with it, putting a Band-Aid on a problem so that it appears to be fixed, but it's not. And ultimately, we're dragging down our neighborhoods and our communities, and we're not necessarily resolving the bigger core issue.
Yeah, but the thing with, I haven't yet heard one real politician, and you're not a politician, but anybody really get to the root of the cause. And we had this discussion last time, but I was on a delay. I couldn't really get at you. It's drug addiction. It's drug addiction, Anthony. And I don't know if you or the other politicians, for some reason in the back room, you guys say, hey, you can't say drug addiction because you're gonna displace your voters. Most of the voters, most of my viewers know it's drug addiction because we lived that life. I used to smoke meth. I used to smoke crack. I used to do sherm. I used to do every drug in the book. I got friends living in those little boxes. I got friends living in tents, and I can tell you with 100%. 85 to 95% of the people out there right now are drug addicts, but it's like people just keep throwing money at it.
So I'll tell you a couple facts, right? We'll look at data. Number one, the number one cause of homelessness is the rising cost of housing. That's technically a data point.
That's fake.
That's the number one.
That's
now,
fake.
As far as what happens when you become homeless, or do you have a higher propensity to get into drug addiction? 100%. It probably increases by 80% fold. But I'll one-up you on
Let's do it.
What the true disease is, what the true core matter is that contributes to our homelessness, right? It's not drug addiction yet. Drug addiction is a symptom. Homelessness is a symptom. Mental health is a symptom. But you want to know the disease? The disease is a broken home. That's the disease. That is at the core level. If you were to really just strip the BS back, and let's just say, we're just going to talk transparently and raw.
Please.
All of those things that we see with our eye, that you're walking over in the streets, those are all symptoms of a bigger disease, and that's a broken home. Fatherless homes, fatherless kids, broken homes, a government that actually incentivizes our single moms not to have the husband or the boyfriend or the father in the household. It's the oppression on the minority communities to be dependent on the government. Those things at a core level then contribute to all the things that eventually cause.
I would agree with you and disagree with you. I would agree that at a core level, that's what's going to fix the issues going on out there. But
that's the cancer at a core level.
Yeah, yes, it is 100%. But as far as the mental illness, that comes from smoking meth. That comes from using drugs.
Part of it can, and part of it does.
That's 100%. The thing.
I'm not hiding the impact of drug addiction. I know several people I went to high school with lost their lives to drug abuse and drug addiction, and they're wrecks. They're half functioning adults right now because of drug abuse, which then causes different levels and forms of mental illness. But at the end of the day, again, you go back to the root of the problem. We, in our household, that's what we like to talk about. Like, let's get to the root, right? Let's not deal with it. And a lot of times, are you married?
Yes, absolutely. I've been with my wife for 20-some years.
Okay, so you know firsthand that when your wife is speaking to you, very seldom what you're hearing is exactly what she wants to communicate to you.
Of course.
Oftentimes, right, you got to peel back the layers and say, I hear what you're saying, but I think I know what you mean. Okay, well, that's the problem with society, is that we're looking at drug abuse and drug addiction and crime and homelessness and our prisons and our foster care system, and we say, man, look at those problems. Let's put a Band-Aid on them. Let's address those issues. But until somebody realizes that the cancer is really what happens in the home, has a family-first agenda to keeping families together, incentivizing the family, until we resolve that and have more fathers in the home, more families, we're going to continue to perpetuate these problems over and over. 10 years from now, your children will be dealing with it because we didn't fix it.
But that will go to fixing drug addiction, gang membership, or that family core helps out in every single bit. But when you say that the majority of people out there that are homeless are because of housing prices, buddy, I'll come over to my house. We'll have lunch, and I'm gonna take you down the trip down Memory Boulevard over here.
I'm saying the initial. If you look at someone who's not homeless, who enters into homelessness, what is the number one cause of somebody who has a home one day and doesn't the next day?
Here in North Hollywood is drug addiction, 100%.
It's the cost of living by far in the nation. And then once you become homeless, the likelihood that you become a drug addict, the likelihood that you're going to have some type of mental illness increases exponentially.
Okay, well, you obviously haven't came here. Over here, it's the other way around. They become drug addicts first, then become homeless. ¿Hablas español? Like I
Yeah,
say?
of course.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sure you heard the song, No quieren trabajar, no quieren trabajar. That's what's going down over here. And the thing is this, back in the day, I'm 46 years old. Back in the day, out here, the gang members and everybody else, a homeless guy would be seen like, it'd be shunned upon. It'd be like, oh my God, that's horrible. And he'd be probably in his late 30s. Nowadays, you got guys out there. I'm telling you, every single homeless encampment out there is 85, 90% meth, heroin. These guys are 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And it's not because, oh, they lost their home. No, they got families and they chose to do the drugs.
that goes back to what I said. Why is an 18-year-old homeless on meth?
So, okay, so
I guarantee you, we'll trace back the majority of those kids and we'll find fatherless homes. It's
yeah,
because
it's
men
just
men like us forget how to be men. See,
yes,
any male could be a father,
yes,
but you have
yes.
to choose to be a dad, right?
Okay,
That's the difference.
now we have the thing is now we have this huge cancer. Okay, I'm a voter. I'm asking you, Anthony, what are you gonna do? Are you okay for me to have all these little homes next to my neighborhood? Are you okay with the police not being every week? Every week, it doesn't fail. I have to go outside. You know what I do? I had this guy out there on Monday. I go out there. My wife said, "Hey, he's out there finally. He's out there with some meth head chick in the RV." I go knock. I said, "Hey, homie, this ain't that kind of party. From this block to this block, get to stepping." That's how aggressive I gotta get with these guys, and it's every week. If not, one RV will come, another RV will come, and another RV will come. So we have the cancer already. The cancer is here. The core, what you're saying, yes, that made that cancer. But that cancer is here. What do we do, Anthony?
So just like I was telling someone earlier, the governor needs to be a surgeon. The governor needs to remove that cancer, right?
Yes.
And part of the way that you do it is you have tools. You have nonprofits, you have the churches, those are tools. But the police are a tool too. And the police are not being allowed to police right now.
No.
We have weak mayors. We have a weak governor. And so we have police officers who get dressed up every day, put on their badge, and they're not allowed to police. They're not allowed to arrest for petty crimes, which the definition continues to change. They're not allowed to get homeless off the street. They're not allowed to do anything that is politically incorrect for a lot of these, social tyrants that want to exploit social issues. And so the very first thing we do is let police be police again. Support men and women in blue, fund them, allow them to go in and operate. We start to look at our district attorneys and start to put people in place that will actually enforce our laws and empower the police to get people off the street and keep them off the street if they continue to violate our laws.
Where do we take them?
Well, if they're violating our laws, they go to jail.
Okay.
But the problem is that we don't keep them in jail. We have a governor that likes to release prisoners, and he wants to close down prisons and he wants to release prisoners. So yes. There's really no consequence. And if you have children, you know that as soon as a child understands that there's no consequence for an action, they will continue to repeat that action over and over again.
Would you be willing, because this is my crazy idea, would you be willing to do some type of tent cities, just how Arpaio had in Arizona, put them there? Whoever doesn't want to follow the rules, go there. You can have medical aid there. You can have drug counseling there. In other words, you can't pop a tent in front of somebody's home. You can't pop a tent. All our parks now are full of homelessness. My wife was, I'm telling you, this is one of my worst problems. This was on Tuesday. My wife comes back and tells me there's this guy with no shirt. Her and her friend were out there walking around the park, comes with his shirt off, screaming, "F you, bitch." I'm sorry for the word, but that's what he says. And I got to have my wife come, and I'm like, "Why don't you call me?" She's like, "No, I don't want you to get into any trouble." But this is a constant thing, and it's only getting worse. So are you willing to put these guys somewhere else, or are we going to just...
No, I'm willing to find designated areas to move them while we process them, while we identify those that need mental health, those that need to get weaned off drug addiction, and those that need to be arrested.
Would you also be willing to, because it seems like, and I believe that in California, if you have a drug problem, they give you disability. You will get a check every single month. So I'm like, wait a minute, dude, you're a dope fiend, but you're getting a check for $900 a month?
Yeah, I think we talked about this. We may have, but yeah, you implement drug testing for everybody that's on any type of disability or welfare.
That's right.
You start to hold them accountable for, taking help. If you're gonna get help, you're gonna receive help. There are conditions.
Are you for, I think, Prop H, I don't know how many let me see. I think I wrote it down here. Prop H, they were supposed to make 10,000 units, which these units will help. Listen, if it's a family person, like you believe that it's family people, mothers, fathers who really are down on the luck, yeah, to me, house them, help them, yes. But when I hear housing the homeless, quote unquote, which I say they're mostly drug addicts, it's almost like having a drug addict in your house and you're telling them, hey, mijo, here's a room, here's some money, I'm going to give you money a month. That's never going to fix the problem. We can't house our way out of this problem.
No, I agree. That's why everything has to have conditions and time limits, including welfare.
How about this one? Is there anything we can do about all these people coming from other states? Because people are coming from other states just to be homeless here and smoke dope.
You have to make it less desirable to want to be here. We have to make California a state that you do not want to be in if you're homeless, because it is unwelcoming to people that want to violate our laws.
Absolutely. Now I had a
So
question.
right now, that's not the case. Right now, you can pretty much pop a tent in Venice Beach, beachfront property that people pay millions of dollars for. You can just say, "This is my spot. This is my porch. This is where I'm living. Look at my view," and we're allowing that to happen. So if I'm in Arizona and I'm dealing with 120-degree weather, you best believe I'm on my way to Venice, right? As a homeless person. But if we make it less desirable for them to be here, and again, with compassion, with love, understanding that they're all dealing with various degrees of drug addiction and abuse and mental health, with compassion, but you make it less desirable, like that's not the place you want to be. They're cracking down. They're tough. We'll stop it.
Now, why is it that it's only places like where I live, where minorities live, that all these homeless shelters are being built?
You have weak mayors. That's why. You're in Los Angeles County?
Yes, sir.
In Los Angeles? Yeah, you have one of the weakest mayors. You continue to have weak mayors out there. And that's the problem, is that they are able to operate because they have air cover from our governor, and there's no accountability. But we would stop funding to these mayors until they hit certain metrics. It would be a merit-based program for mayors to ensure that they had clean streets, safe communities. Otherwise, we'd start cutting off funding, right. Period.
That was a great back and forth. I love it. Thank you. The homie Batman, which is a gentleman quite like myself. He's a ex-gang member. He's now his own business owner. He's been clean. He's actually a mentor in his community. He asked, what would your take be, or would you be willing to give Second Amendment rights back to ex-felons like myself that have been clean, are living a good life? And it seems like for myself, I'm like, I can't protect my home because of what I did 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
So there's areas, right? So non-violent offenders that are out and go into a program where you can earn that right back. Because I've had this conversation with ex-felons. Okay. But for violent criminals, especially repeat violent criminals, they have no business owning a firearm. It would be irresponsible of us. But for nonviolent offenders that have served their time, we give them their right to vote back. Why wouldn't we give them their other rights back? But I believe that there should be a program that we put them in, and it's over a period of time that we can monitor, and they can meet certain milestones. And assuming that they were able to do that and qualify for it, I don't see why not.
Perfect. Now, I was going to ask you, God, which one was it going to? Oh, there you go. I got it written down. See, I'm a smart man. Are you vaccinated? Or is this don't ask, don't tell policy?
Those are my private medical records. I can't tell you if I am or not, because it's none of your damn business.
That tells me you are. Maybe. I don't know. But okay, me personally, I am not vaccinated. I do not sit there and push, don't vax. I do not. All my family's vaccinated. All right. People that sit there and think, oh, no, all my family's vaccinated. I'm the one that they say you're crazy. And I said from day one, even before, because I was like, the FDA hasn't approved it. I'm just a cautious guy. I'm sorry. Right. But what is your take on this new mandate that's happening, first of all, in Los Angeles, that they're going to start asking in the next 2 weeks for your little card and say, are you vaxxed or not?
It's a bunch of crap. On my first day in office, I would lift the state of emergency. That would take away power from local government to make mask mandates. I would eliminate and terminate any conversations regarding vaccine verification or passports. And I would immediately lift the mandate on all of our healthcare workers, teachers, and students, mandating that they get vaccinated. And this is not because I'm an anti-vaxxer. I actually don't care. If you want a vaccine, you should have one. The government should make available to you the treatment that is available to you should you decide to take it. But the government has no business telling you what you can and cannot put into your body. And so you have dominion over your body, and I don't believe the government has any place telling you what you should put into it.
Now, are you going somewhere this Saturday for a Vax rally or something?
I'm going a lot of places this Saturday. I'll be speaking at a church. We'll be at a rally. We'll be at a political event. Probably one of my busiest days yet.
Wow. So,
and by the way, I wouldn't call it a vax rally. It's a pro-choice rally.
Yes. Like I said, me, you want to get vaccinated, get your money. But it's just, don't shame me because I don't want to, or don't sit there and ask me for a card. I will wear a mask. I'll go through all the mandates. If to me, it's this. Some people will sit there and say, hey, Gil, they do it in schools. They've been doing it. I'm like, yeah, but school is a government entity. When you're making private places say you have to, that should be up to that business owner. If the Staples Center wants to do it, that's on them. But if a private person wants to do it.
Those people are also talking about FDA-approved vaccines. And what you're talking about is not. You're talking about an experimental drug, 3 versions of an experimental drug that have not been FDA approved, that the state is saying you have to take.
Yes.
But we're the clinical trial right now. They didn't go through animal trials. There was not enough time. So the human race is the clinical trial.
Pretty much. But when you say that, they get upset at you. They think
like I said, but it's okay. If you want to be part of the clinical trial, please sign up. Take your shot. Get a booster. Every year you're going to need another one. Go for it. Knock yourself out. But for those that do not want to be part of the clinical trial, we should enforce them.
Yes, sir. So I didn't get too much into your childhood history because, just with the stuff we were doing before. But where were you actually raised at, Anthony?
I was born in Torrance. I grew up for a few years in Long Beach, then Downey. I spent time in La Puente. I spent time in Walnut, West Covina. But the majority, once I became an adult, was in Downey, where I had my kids. I got married. They were all born in Downey, and before we moved out to Orange County.
And then, how did you become the successful man you are? Did you just, get rich overnight or start making money overnight? How does that go? Because a lot of people see you and they believe that's how easy it is.
20-year-old overnight success, right? My grandfather, when he came from Cuba in the 50s, the last thing he wanted was to depend on the government, right? So he came to the United States wanting the American dream. In his mind, the American dream was, you're not dependent on the government, you find your own way. So he became an entrepreneur, started a company, South Central LA, right by the Alameda corridor on 55th and Alameda. It still exists today. My father runs that company, instilled the entrepreneurial spirit in him. So right around, I had my second son, and I had been working odd jobs up until then. And I finally decided, you know what, I'm finally going to do it. I started my company, a small little 200 square foot office in Downey. And over the next 20 years, through hard work, sweat equity, and a lot of God's grace, I built the company up. It's now considered one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America. Overnight.
Yeah, right over that. Well, that's how people always seem to think. They don't see the hard work that people like yourself do. And to me, I love it because I love seeing a fellow Latino out there like yourself. You're out here.
And I want to call this out because in those humble beginnings that I'm talking about,
yes,
my wife and we were eating hamburger helper without the meat because we couldn't afford the beef. We had a cardboard box as a coffee table. We had her childhood place set couch as our living room furniture. We had a plastic patio set as a dining table, and somebody donated a free refrigerator to us where the light didn't work. So at night you'd go in there and you couldn't even see what was in there. I know what it's like to have the lights turned off on you, right? To have the water turned off on you. I crashed our car. We finally bought a new car. I crashed it within the first week. We got the insurance money for it. It was about $890. And we had a choice: fix the car, pay rent. Fix the car, pay rent, paid rent. I owned that car for the next 5 years, never got that dent fixed. The entire front end was bashed in. But that's what you have to do in humble beginnings. You barely get by. So I can appreciate those people who are struggling right now to make ends meet, because I've been there. And I can also appreciate and value what it means to actually live the American dream.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Like I said, that's why I dig about you. You come from humble beginnings. You know what it is, and the sad thing, a lot of times people see it, and sometimes you think, oh, well, he's a Republican. Like I try to tell people, California Republicans are like Democrats in Texas. It's a different world. But I, what's your take on transgender, especially transgenders in female sports?
They don't belong in female sports. Female sports should be based on how that person was born biologically, period, end of story.
So how about bathrooms that a transgender going to a female's bathroom?
Same thing. People would argue that a person is at various stages of conversion, various stages of completing their process, and everyone within every stage of that process would identify as what they're looking to achieve. I don't want my daughter in a bathroom with somebody who is at any level. No, the bottom line is we need to protect our children. They need to be biologically separate. What you were born is what you are, irregardless of what you identify with. Identification happens up here in the head, but who you are is in your DNA, right?
Right. Now, what would your take be if you became governor as far as lockdowns? Would you ever implement that?
Never again. So I would never implement a lockdown for the sole reason that we in America are a free society, and the government shouldn't be empowered to strip away your liberties and your rights. I think what we need to do is, in a situation like that, empower our citizens with the information and knowledge that they need to make a decision. But the idea that government should be so overreaching that they can shut down churches, businesses, schools, that's communism. That's exactly what communism is. And that's not this country.
I didn't like the fact that during all the riots and everything, they never said one word, let it run. And I myself, I'm not really a very religious man. I respect it all day long. But I even got upset. I'm like, wait a minute, how are you going to be shutting down churches, but you're letting everybody out there act a fool? Makes no sense.
Yeah. You don't have to, that's what I'm saying. You don't have to be religious to agree that as in a free society, I shouldn't tell you if and when you can open your business, who you can serve and who you can't, when you can open and close, if you can worship or not, irregardless of where you worship. I shouldn't be able to tell you that. We elect, here's what I like to say. God created man, man created government. Now government wants to play God. It doesn't work that way.
That's great. What about men? This is from one of the viewers here, got him. What about men going to women's prison? Recently in California, they started giving out condoms in females' prisons because one of the transgender guys got a girl pregnant.
Absolutely not. It's the same thing as a bathroom. It's the same thing in sports. It doesn't, I get it. And look, at the end of the day, I have compassion and love for everybody of every race and every sexual preference. God loves them. I'm called to love them. I don't have to agree with them. But at the end of the day, just because you identify as something other than what you are doesn't mean that everyone around you needs to identify with how you see yourself. Because I can identify with 100 different things tomorrow morning that doesn't make me that, And so it's the idea that society as a whole has to compromise truth because of how you see from your perspective is illogical.
When I was talking about you and what I like, and what people need to understand, and a lot of them don't, Anthony, is you're not doing this for the money. You're not doing this for the fame. It's on the contrary. You're actually putting yourself out there where people are going to try to use you to punch you back, try to say all stuff. Why are you running for governor?
Because somebody needs to salvage the American dream that my grandfather fled Cuba to pursue. Because I have 5 children, and that I need to leave this place better than I received it. Because I don't want to live in a country where the government is empowered and emboldened to strip away my rights and my liberties, which are not theirs to take. I've already been, I've had clients call and threaten not to do work with us because of what I'm doing,
Bet.
because they're in different parts of the country and they don't necessarily agree with some of the things I'm saying, even though what I'm saying is very much about pro freedom, pro liberty, I have the most middle of the road message of any candidate, but still others will find reasons to disagree. So I've been threatened with regards to work, loss of money, loss of income. And, obviously my family and I have thrust ourselves into an arena that is ugly and evil. So, but if we don't do it, right, if we don't do it, it could be you and I in 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks, a month from now, may not be able to go into a restaurant. Your child, if your child is not of age to even make the decision to get the vaccine, because I think the legal limit now is 12. So if you have an 11-year-old, what does that mean? The 11-year-old can't walk into a restaurant with you, can't walk into a hospital, can't get on a bus, can't get on a plane. I mean, the idea that we would turn into a communist country like that is absurd. Someone needs to fight and shake things up.
So Jake, California ask Anthony Romino if he's elected, would he be willing to address California's water storage?
100%. So I was just in Central California this week. I was up there twice, 2 days, speaking with farmers, and farmers will tell you firsthand, and I toured a 6,000 acre farm. We don't have a water shortage problem. We have a water management problem. In fact, farmers are telling me that at one time we had 5 years worth of water supply, that there was an abundance of water. They're currently paying for 100% of their water, and they're getting 5% of it. Because what's happening is that we're squandering our water, and it's being dumped into the San Francisco Bay to dilute the high levels of toxicity that are in the water. So it's being diverted away from farmers. And so it's not necessarily about a water shortage problem, so I'll fix that. I'll fix the water management problem, give our farmers the water that they need. And then we will work on ways in which to generate water, store water, make water.
Now, if you were to become governor, what could you do or would you be willing to do for these inner city youth to try to divert them from the drugs, from the gangs? How do we help that core issue that you said? How do we get it back to where it's a family unit?
Well, it starts with men being men again, men being fathers again, and us getting active. So first of all, me being in office, right, a Hispanic, 50% Mexican, 50% Cuban, right? Me being in office already gives encouragement to so many of our minorities. Look what can happen. Look at what Obama did to the black community when he became president. There were a lot of people who never thought that they would see that day. And he became a beacon of hope and an example of what could happen if you just set your mind to. So we need better examples, right? So that I would be that example to a lot of people. But my whole family first agenda is about really getting engaged at the community level and creating community outlets, neighborhood outlets, so that our youth are more empowered and emboldened to stay away from drugs and to be productive. If you think about our school systems as an example, our school systems were created, the curriculum was created back when we were trying to raise farmers, trying to raise housewives. We don't have leadership in our schools. What I want to do is create a leadership-based curriculum where kids are put through, especially through their high school years, a leadership-based curriculum that teaches them how to be engineers and inventors and entrepreneurs and investors, so that when they get out of high school, they're incredibly hopeful that they could either choose to go to college because they want to pursue a very specific career, or go out into the workplace and actually be productive, to actually make money, to actually be successful. And so I have a plan in which to do that, and it'll start with the inner city and the minority communities.
Nice. So we got one for Mr. Dubs. This gentleman is actually ex-lifer. He's been out of prison for, I want to say, about 3 to 4 years. He just got off parole a few months ago, and he's a productive citizen in society. His question is, if elected, would he allow lifers granted parole for freedom, or would he second guess the BPH Commission's opinion?
Would I allow lifers granted parole their freedom? So give me an example of...
Well, what it is after the lifer goes through the board and gets parole, usually if you're not a lifer, the parole board paroles you, you're out. right? You're good. But when a lifer goes on parole, it always has to go to the governor's office, and the governor's the one that's going to sign him or release him. Are you going to be that governor? Because you can ignore them. You can ignore them, and they say no, and then they'll take a while, or you can, and finally they'll reject them. Are you going to be that governor that's actually going to take time and look at case, or are you going to be like, just screw these guys?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a process that exists today. So if our governor is ignoring it, what he's doing is he's shortchanging the inmate, but he's also causing unnecessary cost on our infrastructure and our system that it keeps getting to his desk and he keeps denying it. Just the process of it getting to him alone and ignoring it is costing the taxpayers money. So you either need to shut down that whole process altogether and don't even do it at all, or you address it. And I would actually love to address it, but I would build a coalition of individuals around me, a board that would actually review it with me, that would have the foresight, the insight, and the, to be able to pass a decision on something as significant as this. Because I do believe in rehabilitation. I do believe, I'm Christian, so I 100% believe in redemption, right? And there are people who deserve redemption. And there are people who we obviously know will be career criminals, and they belong in prison for the rest of their life and then some. So it's a case-by-case basis, but I definitely would do my job on the matter, put it that way.
Very cool. I've got a gentleman here. Let me see who it is. Gil, can you ask him his views on Dreamers?
This is the whole immigration conversation. And I mean, at the end of the day, we need strong borders and we need strong immigration laws. I believe that somebody who's in this country illegally and has committed a felony should be gone. But I believe that the individuals that are here, regardless of whether or not they're here illegally or not, even though my grandfather came legally and I hire people who come legally all the time, at the end of the day, there are people who are here not by their own will, children, and then obviously people who are here and are contributing members of society. I believe that there is a path, a compassionate path for those individuals to stay, to be here, to be productive members of society, whether they're in school or in the workplace. And I believe there would be a path for that, but not for criminals. And definitely we would work toward creating a very strong border with very strong immigration laws so that we're not having to have these type of conversations in the future.
Absolutely. That's, man, you're right there on line with that one. So Anthony, I'm gonna cut this interview because I want to be able to put it on my Instagram, and on the Instagram you can only do it for 1 hour, right? But before I go, I want to tell you, as myself, I am voting for sure to recall Gavin Newsom. And I would encourage every single of my listeners, at the very least, vote to get rid of Newsom. But Mr. Anthony, I will tell you, you have my vote, my man. I love what you're doing. I respect what you're doing. You're a brown man that's actually taking the initiative to do what's right for our families, man. You definitely got my vote, and you got the last word.
Amen, brother. I mean, that makes me feel good. Our two conversations have been they've been awesome. You ask tough questions. You expect tough answers. You want transparency. I didn't know anything that you were going to ask me before we met both times. This has just been raw and unscripted. I've been authentic and real, and I appreciate and value the fact that you've done your homework, that you had me on twice, that you put me through the fire, and that ultimately that you landed on what I pray and hope is the best decision, because I truly believe that I'm doing this for the right reason. I have nothing to gain. I truly want to see California a better place for you, your family, your neighborhood, mine. We are so much more similar than we are different. And that goes for everyone who watches you. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, no matter what color your skin is, at the end of the day, there is more that unites us than divides us. And that's my mission. That's my story. You're not going to see me far right. You're not going to see me bash the far left. I want to find the things that bring us together, that we have in common. And I want to give power back to the people to live in a free society so you can make the decisions that you feel are best for your family, regardless of whether or not I agree with them or not, because that's America.
And that's the end, brother.
Right on.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
God bless you too, man. Take care.